Gender is a cross-cutting issue among the AU Commission, and that has been evidenced by the fact that 2016 has been apportioned a year of human rights with particular focus on women. However, the million-dollar question is, do the policymakers understand that gender equality is very paramount or is a catalyst for social and economic development? Hello there, thank you so much for watching our TV, and thank you so much for making us your #1 station. I'm Immy Mulekatete, and on the AU sidelines of the summit that is ongoing in Kigali, I'm joined by the Director of Women, Gender and Development, Mrs. Mahawa Kaba Wheeler. A pleasure to have you on the set.
A pleasure to be here.
Let's start with the million-dollar question. Do the policymakers understand that gender equality is a catalyst for social and economic development?
Yes, the policymakers actually celebrate that, and that's why we have in Agenda 2063 Aspiration 6, which speaks to the full realization of the rights of women and the youth, but also in Agenda 2063, women and youth engagement and participation is considered a critical success factor to the realization of Agenda 2063. Furthermore, the Maputo Protocol, which entered into force in 2003, was through also the will and the active contribution of policymakers. In addition to having an African Charter on human and people's rights, they realized that there was a gap. It needs to be further strengthened by having a protocol which spoke exclusively to the various rights of women. So yes, we would say that they get it. And in addition, in the Constitutive Act of the African Union, Article 4L speaks to full gender parity, which again is really the result of policymakers at the time coming together to say this continent will be a continent where gender equality is the norm.
Thank you so much for citing the AU legal structures or instruments that are in place. Talking about the 2000 AU Constitutive Act, that is a foundational and constitutional framework promoting gender and equality. There is one of 2003 that you also touched on, the Maputo Protocol, and not forgetting 2009 Gender and Policy Framework, and one in 2010, the African Women's Decade. What is your office doing with all these legal structures?
And I would like to add to that the Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality in Africa, which was also a decision of the AU African Union heads of state and government to once more put gender in the center of the agenda. And the Department of Women, Gender and Development, which I lead, is tasked with making sure that commitments that are embedded in those various instruments are implemented. And how do we do that? We work across the institution. We work across the union with leaders in various departments and member states to translate those commitments into tangible actions. We also play an important role in advising the organization and the union on trends, developments, and again, keeping them honest on what is working and what is not working, and reporting as well. So there is accountability.
Director, I think my question would have been, are they owning up to most of these legal structures that are in place? And if they are owning up, why do we still see women in some countries not necessarily equal to their male counterparts?
There is ownership. There's a recognition that we need to implement those commitments. However, it's a phenomenon across the world, not just singular to Africa. And it takes time. It's social transformation, social change. And yes, at times we feel like, well, it is real. More progress needs to be done. The pace has to be accelerated. And that was clearly affirmed in Agenda 2063. And again, just moving into the theme of this year, last year was also dedicated to gender equality and women's economic empowerment, and so is this year. And moving into 2017, where the continent is speaking to harnessing the demographic dividend through the youth. The demographic dividend is again women, and the majority of the youth are also young girls. So continuously the African Union places an emphasis on the importance and the role of empowering women. Yes, we've made progress, but we want to see more progress. We want to see an acceleration in the pace of implementation.
I also think it's paramount to engage the key stakeholders when it comes to the aspiration 6 of the Agenda 2063. Are women brought onto the board and say, let us work with you? Do they have the full participation when it comes to realizing that the Africa we want, Agenda 2063?
The Africa we want, Agenda 2063, is the Africa owned by its citizens, owned by its people. And the elaboration of Agenda 2063 itself was one of the most inclusive multi-stakeholder consultative processes. Now, as the Department for Women, Gender and Development, our role is to keep the momentum. Our role is to mobilize the necessary resources. Our role is to collaborate with all stakeholders, including the media, in keeping attention on the commitments that have been made and also supporting in its implementation. So yes, there is multi-stakeholder engagement, and we just concluded on the 8th and 9th of July here in Kigali, the 3rd high-level panel on gender equality and women's empowerment, which brought together close to 400 delegates representing member states, ministers of gender and women's affairs, scholars, practitioners, activists, international partners to engage on this subject and take stock of where we are with the Maputo Protocol.
Director, the reason why I'm asking about full participation of the women is the fact that women are still struggling with issues like teen pregnancies at a tender age and early and forced marriages. I remember it was mentioned that at least 35% as of 2014 were still into child marriages, and that also still seems to impede the women empowerment that we are looking out for. So what's being done to mitigate such barriers, such persistent barriers that are against gender equality that you want to achieve?
As you rightly said, we have to continue working on multiple fronts. The challenges are many, and depending on which side of the continent you are, you will see a whole nother set of challenges. The issue of child marriage is one that requires urgent attention and continued persistent activism and advocacy and awareness raising because of its social economic impact on the continent. And just 4 years ago, the African Union started launching the campaign on ending child marriage. And in June, there were campaigns launched in Senegal and in Eritrea. So that is part of the efforts that are being led. And also the African experts on the right and welfare of the child have also put in place various frameworks, policy and legal, to further protect. However, it goes deeper than that. Issues of gender equality are rooted, are traced back to social dynamics, the socialization process, and we need to work on that front. In as much as we are working with policymakers, we need to go down, very deep down to the grassroots, to traditional leaders, to local religious leaders, but also work with the women in understanding that early marriage is not a solution to ending poverty. They're a gateway out of poverty.
Director, also when you cite the traditional setting, it reminds me of the fact that most of our mothers didn't actually get a chance to look at any blackboard, and those are the illiteracy rates that are so high, and these are the same women we want to be on board when we talk about the movement to lead them where they want to go. How are you, I don't know how this can be so easy when most of those women didn't go to school. What are you doing to ensure that whether they didn't go to school with such illiteracy levels very high, they can still be brought on board to ensure that we achieve the parity we're looking for?
Yes, it is true that illiteracy affects even harder a certain generation of women, but we also have to celebrate those women.
Yeah,
they were the trailblazers.
Sure.
Without much education and literacy, they helped bring our continent from colonialism into independence. We went to school because they recognized that the absence of education was a barrier, and so they helped our mothers and ourselves be in school. And there are lots of women also who did go to school who belong to that generation, and we don't celebrate them enough. I can give you the example of Her Excellency Madame Jeanne Martin Cissé, who was the first woman to ever preside over the UN Security Council. And that was in the 70s at the time already.
Problem is there are not that many.
But it's enough also to recognize that they did contribute, and we need to shed light on the contributions they made. However, illiteracy cannot continue. We have to put an end to illiteracy. In some countries, there are schools set up to help women who want to go back, who want to become literate, to have access to it. But there are also other forms of literacy which they have, which enabled them to go through life and help us be where we are, which need to be celebrated, but also adapting our tools, our educational tools and infrastructure to their needs.
I know we've talked just about women, but when you also look at the girls, they are kept in the kitchen. They are kept to probably even look after their fellow siblings. And that will still be a challenge to the next generations to come, because, I mean, the other children are coming into the system that haven't gone to school. Are you trying, regardless of the fact that there is also universal education, girls are still kept at home? How is that being addressed?
The burden of domestic work on girls and women is real, and it's actually been quantified. Some studies show that women and girls work on average at least 4 hours more than men. That's documented. And its impact on their ability to focus and remain in school and even have a social life. It is real, and sensitization campaigns, awareness campaigns are being led to change that dynamic. We are seeing that in some countries where girls and boys have equal opportunities, but it's real that burden exists, and it's going to become even more severe with aging of our population, where more women and girls will be called upon to provide this, as we call it, unpaid work for the care of aging family dependents. It's a reality which is right on our heels, and we need to start addressing.
Talk about the AU gender architecture. Who is in charge, or which office is in charge to mainstream, to monitor or spearhead the mainstreaming of gender policies into most of the policies and programs of the different respective countries of the member states?
The primary responsibility lies with the chairperson of the African Union, and with the Commission, the commissioners as well. But then the Department for Women, Gender and Development spearheads the initiative. We are the advisors to the chairperson, we are the advisors to all the commissioners, to making sure that the architecture which you spoke to is indeed implemented. So on a daily basis, we have interactions with all the departments, with the organs, to again further the implementation of the various commitments that have been made. So yes, you're speaking to the right person.
Very good. Now let me wind up with this. We love our mothers, we love our daughters, but why should this be a challenge that is persistent, that is lingering? Yet we love all these special people, we respect them. Why should it be a challenge that is eating up our society?
It's the question we all pose ourselves. And I remember speaking with one young man once who said, but I don't understand that women carry us for 9 months. We trust them with carrying us. But the moment we are born and we grow up, we don't trust them anymore. We don't believe in their capacity and their strength, and we push them behind. Power relations are a reality, and one that we must overcome, because we cannot leave behind more than 50% of the continent's population, which is really our wealth. And I'd like to again quote an expression Her Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the chairperson of the African Union, used. She said, no longer behind men, the expression of behind every strong man there's a strong woman, but rather side by side. By the side of every strong man there is a strong woman. So we will get there. It's about social transformation, it's about changing mindsets, but the fact that we talk about it, it's celebrated, it's a theme of the African Union. it shows that there has been some progress and an acknowledgement that the continent, in fact the whole world, gender equality needs to be realized for the world to be a better place for everybody is in itself an achievement.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you too.
And thank you so much for watching. Like she has noted, we love these women. We respect them. We give them the ability or the trust to carry us and be who we are. They actually tame and nurture us. And then along the way, we sideline them. Therefore, the responsibility of promoting and advancing women empowerment is mine and yours. Our responsibility is for all of us. Keep watching Aura TV.